This morning, we are taking a look at what it really costs to be a sanctuary city in New York City. Over the past 2.5 years, we have welcomed more than 200,000 undocumented immigrants.
All right, so it is true that the numbers are definitely trending down in the costs and the folks that we have to take care of, but the cost to care for them really is still not down as much as the numbers of people are. So we have to look at it. Investigative reporter Dan Krauth has been looking into why that is and what the plan is moving forward. Dan?
So I want to start off this particular video by highlighting something that I think is probably the most crucial element of this particular story, which is, of course, the date that this local news segment decided that it was going to come out, which is April 3rd of 2025. The local news affiliate, ABC7's for New York, decided that it was finally about damn time that we start investigating the cost per migrant in the city of New York in 2025. After the numbers are already dropping down, after the evil orange man decided to take power, we are now looking at how much it costs to be a sanctuary city per migrant. And unfortunately, when you break down the numbers, whether you're talking about the overall budget, the overall total spent, or the cost per migrant, it is absolutely disgraceful because it shows that these literal non-citizens, these people who are defrauding the asylum system and here illegally, are costing significantly more than our desperate citizens, than the people who actually should be relying on our public systems, and I find that to be absurd and disgusting, but not surprising at all whatsoever. Now look, we're going to get into this, we're going to break this down, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
When the buses first rolled into New York City, there were so many undocumented immigrants, there was nowhere to put them. Manuel Castro, the Commissioner of Immigrant Affairs, was there to greet them and figure it out.
Certainly, it's been a challenge. And this is not just a story of how a city responds to a migrant humanitarian crisis, but also how we meet our obligations with our local laws.
Obligations to shelter anyone who asks for it. The city put up tents and rushed to convert more than 150 hotels into shelters.
So right here we have our immigration commissioner talking about how, look, this is not just about the cost, this is not just about the migrants, this is about how we meet our obligations, how we meet the requirements of our laws, and that is the tale that he is trying to spin, as he has been at the forefront of spending an absurd amount of money on these illegal migrants. And I just want to point out for everybody out there in the audience that what he's talking about, what he's referring to, are all self-imposed obligations, self-imposed requirements. The right to shelter in New York City was something that was passed by the New York City Council. These sanctuary laws are attributed not just to New York State, therefore imposed in all the different various counties, but additional sanctuary laws were put forward in New York City. So this is the obligations that they decided themselves that they were going to impose on themselves, aka on the taxpayers, that they're struggling to meet, and the cost of that. And again, the reason why New York City and all these other left-wing sanctuary cities were targeted for busing of migrants by Texas Governor Greg Abbott is because their laws, specifically ones like this, indicated that they wanted them, as well as their rhetoric indicating the same. And by the way, even though a lot of play in the media is related to the Texas governor sending these illegal migrants to all these different various locations, when you ask migrants where they wanted to go at the border as they were entering this country illegally, again, under the direction of Joe Biden, who asked people to surge to the border.
In fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
They would tell you time and time again that their destinations of choice would be New York City, would be Chicago, would be Denver, all the places that promised them all these different various benefits. They were made aware of it, and they not only decided that they wanted to go there, but they had a bunch of different nonprofit organizations that were directing them to go to these various locations. So make no mistake about it, these laws drew in more migrants to these areas and ended up burdening the taxpayer even more. And rather than change the laws, they decided that they were just gonna keep paying the money and pretend that there are these holier than thou kind of people and expect the federal taxpayers to bail them out.
We spent over $7 billion in this response.
Billion with a B.
Billion with a B.
The yearly budget for asylum seekers, larger than the budget for the entire health department, the sanitation department, even the fire department.
So $7 billion total was spent on these illegal migrants just in New York City. And as it was pointed out by the local news segment, that is higher than the health department, that is higher than the fire department, that's higher than the sanitation department in this particular city. And I also want to point out, because I think it's worth highlighting, that this money that was being put forward, this crazy dollar amount in order to help people that, by the way, were defrauding the asylum system and specifically were coming to this country in order to suck up benefits, they weren't even grateful for it. There is an iconic clip that I have to work into a bunch of different immigration related videos of the advocates for these individuals deciding that they don't want to be moved from a hotel to a shelter. And the advocate decided that he was going to say that they are entitled to be put up in some of the most luxurious apartments anywhere on planet Earth. And if you think I'm joking about it, well, congratulations, you haven't been watching this channel this long, because I have the video of it and I'm gonna play it for you right now.
He could have easily, along with Governor Hochul, opened up all the vacant luxury apartments. We are on 57th Street right now. This is Billionaires Row. Half of the super towers on this street are empty.
Of course, that begs the question, who would pay for all those luxury apartments?
So we dropped more money than the budget for the fire department, the budget for the sanitation department, and the budget for the health department on these individuals. And then they have the nerve to have their advocates demand that they should be housed in Billionaires Row. They should be housed in some of the most luxury housing in the entire country. Absurd, insane, ridiculous, but that's how crazy this situation got. And by the way, this doesn't even factor in that we have a bunch of different criminals that have been recruiting for gangs like Tren de Aragua within this batch of new arrivals and asylum fraudsters. That's not even to mention the downstream consequences in places like Roosevelt Avenue that have turned into red light districts, or even if they had problems before, got significantly worse due to the fact that so many women are forced into prostitution as a part of their agreement for being smuggled into the United States of America, while the benefits end up going to, guess what, those very same gang members.
The total amount's going down as the amount of people the city's caring for has gone down by more than 20,000 people compared to the same time last year.
The crisis is over, but the continued cost is still there.
To be clear, that number right there, the 60,000 going down to 42,000, are the people that are actually in shelters. That is not the extent of the individuals that are receiving government support from the city of New York. Although obviously the Trump administration's crackdown on illegal immigration and the threat of illegal immigration crackdowns have, of course, reduced immigration into this country, so we don't constantly have the surge of new people adding to that population, so that's a good thing. You have some people self-deporting, and you obviously have some efforts to deport criminals from the city of New York, but the fact is, that's still a lot of people, and the dollar amount per person is absolutely stunning.
Anna Champany is a watchdog for taxpayer dollars.
The city needs to figure out how to manage it more cost-effectively at this point.
Says the number of non-citizens is going down, but the cost to care for them is not. An average of $370 a day, significantly more than what it costs to house New York City's homeless.
It does call into question why the cost per day is so high and has been stubbornly high. It has been about that $370 level since the crisis began.
So that number on its own should tell you everything you need to know about progressive Democratic priorities in this country, because New York City, of course, is a very much Democratic run city. And again, to be clear, if you guys are unaware, the homeless population in the United States of America disproportionately skews towards veterans, so that $207, half of what we're paying for these illegal migrants, is what we're paying to take care of our returning veterans, many in instances, and other people who are suffering from mental illnesses, but more importantly, citizens in this country who have fallen through the cracks get about half of what the illegal migrant gets. And again, I don't know about the state of the homeless people, whether or not they're grateful or not for the shelters that are provided for them, for the options that we have in this city, but I know for a fact that many of these migrants are completely ungrateful, because even when they're getting all these different benefits, even when we're building shelters for them, we get complaint after complaint after complaint. I showed you the clip earlier on of the advocate for them saying that they're entitled to be housed on Billionaires Row, and I find that to be absolutely absurd and disgusting when we're already putting them as a double priority against our own citizens.
It's a lot of money.
Yes, it is.
Why does it cost more to house an undocumented immigrant compared to someone who's homeless?
In large part because we had to set up a system practically overnight and be able to support people we didn't expect would be arriving. There's a lot that goes into understanding the ebb and flow of people who may need shelter.
So of course this guy right here says, oh, well, we had to build a system for these people that we didn't expect overnight. And I will just point out that you should have expected them. We had immigration problems that were promised to us by the Biden administration. They were surging into this country. And of course, you said that you were welcoming to them. You set up all these magnets for benefits from them. So why wouldn't you expect these people to actually show up? It's because you thought that you were going to virtue signal about this issue and never have to live up to your values. But the fact is, you have to do all these different various other steps to build out a whole system for these illegals rather than, say, okay, we were wrong. We don't want these people here. We're not going to care for them. And we're actually going to advocate for sound border policies because the red states and the border states had it right to begin with.
Most of the multi-million-dollar contracts were issued under emergency rules, meaning they didn't have as much scrutiny or oversight as typical contracts.
I think we also need to move out of an emergency state.
So here you have a budget watchdog saying we have to move out of emergency powers because instead of things becoming more efficient, instead of you cutting through the red tape, what actually ended up happening as a consequence of the emergency declared right here is that we completely overspent with the tax dollars on these particular programs. Then they cut back to the commissioner of these illegal migrants, the one who's advocating for them, the one who's enjoying the largesse of this particular budget, and he decides to hit us with this.
The commissioner says they are, and believes when we look back at this moment in time, the ends will justify the means.
Just like so many millions of Americans can trace their story back to Ellis Island, I know that so many people will trace their story back to now.
So one of the major reasons why Democrats lost, one of the major reasons why Eric Adams and a bunch of these different progressive mayors in sanctuary cities find themselves to be underwater, one of the reasons that Governor Kathy Hochul finds herself to be underwater is due to the fact that these people are obsessed with these illegal migrants. They're obsessed with making them into citizens, into future voters. And the thing is, this is a deep ideological commitment for many of the folks that I just talked about. And a perfect example of that is what he just said right there. He's comparing this to Ellis Island. He's like, oh yeah, this is just like all these other different waves of immigrants that came to this country, when in reality, that is not true. I just want to point out for everybody that we did not have this great welfare system for migrants to the United States of America up until relatively recently. Again, you came to this country for the opportunity, for the adventure, for the chance to make it on your own. You had to support yourself or rely on a pre-existing community in order to support you while you got yourself back up on your feet. And there was none of this nonsense about how you were entitled to the largesse of the taxpayers, entitled to be put up in luxury hotels, and entitled so much that even after you were kicked out of that luxury hotel, you were going to demand to be in the best real estate in the country on somebody else's dime. So no, these are not like the migrants from Ellis Island that we talked about in the past. And by the way, many of those people who didn't make it went back to Europe when they failed in the United States of America. And these people, the only thing that they should have in common with the Ellis Island folks is that they should go back to where they came from as well. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think about the increased cost per migrant compared to citizen, homeless citizen to be specific, how much more money was spent on them per year than, the fire department, the health department, sanitation. All your thoughts about the largesse down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, you can show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the insane costs of illegal immigration in New York City. Till next time.